Did we almost lose our mast is a question that arose after a series of unexpected events. The first decision in the chain of events was buying a new wing spinnaker, a huge downwind head sail, which we picked up in Tahiti. We then elected to have the rigging inspected to make sure everything was in working order.
We have the riggers on board, and we have great news. The shrouds are cracked, barely visible, but it is. Yeah, sure. You can see it, that it's actually off. Same here, you can see it's broken.
Well, that wasn't the best news that we could have received, was it?
No, the only reason why we inspected the rig is because we got our new winged spinnaker.
Yeah.
And before putting pressure on the front of the boat, I want to make sure that the rig is fine. We just had inspected in Panama by a rigger, and we look at it. But, there's a lot of corrosion here, but that corrosion is superficial. The actual wire is snapped, so it's not because of corrosion, it's just because of, I think, the force of the ocean or something, I don't know.
Yeah, we don't know why it happened, but we are definitely glad that it was found, exactly. Right? I mean, if it wasn't found and we were on a passage to the Tuamotus or the Marquesas, I mean, it could be really...
Could be really bad. I mean, you could lose your rig, theoretically. Hopefully not, but actually practically, too, you could lose your rig.
Right. But that definitely does change our plans, because once he gives us the quote and then we decide to go ahead with it, it's going to take 2 weeks just to get the supplies. Yeah. We're obviously not moving the boat. We're going to be in Papeete Marina for the next few weeks, which is definitely different than we had planned. Definitely not going to the Leeward Islands this season. And so at any rate, we just have to be thankful that we found it, we didn't find it, that the rigger found it now. And we are still in a beautiful spot. I mean, seriously, I wake up every day and I say, I cannot believe I'm in Tahiti.
Yep.
We have had a few stainless steel items on the boat corrode and some even break. First, it was the stainless steel loop that joins the first and second car on the mainsail track. Then we discovered a few of the strands on the crossbeam cables, and the capshrouds were broken. And finally, it was the strainer on the raw water intake on the engines that were corroded, and one of them even actually had a hole. We've been in communication with Seawind about this, and in particular, when we had the issue with the rigging, they emailed the manufacturer of the cables, who then suggested that we have a test done for stray current. So we had an electrician come out and test for stray current. What is back in there?
Huh?
He found that we did have stray current, in fact. After that, Seawind recommended that we do an in-depth test for electrolysis. And so that is what we are doing today. In order to do this test, we needed to put together this contraption here. Seawind recommended that we use 1 meter of 30 millimeter diameter copper tubing, but what we found was 10 millimeter copper tubing. So we've got 3 1 meter pieces of that bound together, attached to this copper wire. And so basically we have to conduct the test on a dead ship with absolutely no power going to the boat, and test the crossbeam, the rigging, so the cap shrouds on port and starboard, the inner shrouds on port and starboard, the lifelines on port and starboard. What else?
That's it.
And then we have to do the test with the batteries on, and then we have to go through each individual item on the boat that has conductivity. So that's everything from the anchor lights to the instruments. We have a list of, I forget, it's, I don't know, at least 20 items. So we won't bore you with the whole list, but we will show you how we conduct the test on some of the items so you guys can learn about this with us. So we began turning off every single thing in the boat. And I'm not going to lie, it was nerve-wracking. What if something went wrong? What if the batteries didn't come back on? Once the boat was depowered and solar panels covered, we put the copper tubing in salt water, tied off the wire, got our trusty multimeter, and began testing for current. We started with the starboard crossbeam and found 0.10 volts of current. We moved on to the pulpit, mast, starboard, inner, and cap shroud, then all of the same on port, and each had 0.14 volts of current except the starboard lifelines. Starboard railing and 0.03.
One of the reasons that this on starboard the lifelines have not as much current is because the cap shroud here is not touching. On port, the cap shrouds are in contact with the rigging.
This is the solar panel frame, and there is nothing, so no current here. Now we turn the batteries on and repeated the process. Which resulted in the same readings. Now the house battery is on, the BEP panel is on. We're testing with the anchor light. And continued testing every circuit on the boat. As you guys saw earlier today, we tested a number of circuits and we were consistently getting a reading of 0.16 volts. So we spoke with Seawind and they said since we were getting a consistent reading, we didn't have to continue testing each individual circuit, that we could wait for nightfall so that there was no energy going into the solar panels at all, and then turn everything on, test everything at the same time, and if we're still getting that consistent reading of 0.16 volts, then the test is conclusive and we don't have to continue testing each individual circuit. The other thing we do need to do is separate the port lifelines from the cap shroud so we can determine if there's actually conductivity or electricity voltage going through the lifelines or if it's just in the cap shroud, because on starboard there's no voltage in the lifelines. So it's dark and time to do the test. The voltage readings were very high, and after speaking with Seawind, it was deduced that the wet deck was throwing everything off. All right, we are back in action this morning and have done some initial tests. We have the boat in essentially normal mode right now, and we tested the mast, and it showed only, what was it?
0.01.
Yeah, like 0.01, 0.02, basically no current.
So now we have, this is not that ship though, we have some instruments on, but just to document that. This is 0.12.
This is the port cap shroud.
Port cap shroud, and the lifeline
On port
is 0.35. Everywhere on the base of the mast, all the other shrouds and the crossbeam, it's the same. They're all connected to 0.13. So there is something conducting electricity in the lifelines on port.
We spoke to Seawind, and the next step is to try and isolate where the power is coming from in the lifeline. So they recommended taking out the actual lifelines and then measuring the stanchions. We removed the lifelines so we could test each stanchion individually.
This one has nothing. 0 on this one, 0 on this one.
And pretty much nothing on the crossbeam now.
Yeah. We're checking the port nav light to make sure there's no loose wires in there. because we have electricity in this pulpit here.
Oh wow, bunch of water.
Yeah, there's water in there. But this is sealed, the unit is sealed, so it shouldn't really matter.
We began disconnecting the wires.
Okay. So we have disconnected the light. The cable is no longer energized, and we still have 0.32.
So the mystery remained. We had disconnected everything, but there was still current in the stanchions.
So, after testing everything, we found out that there is current right here in this stanchion, that supports this pulpit. And we don't, I was racking my brain trying to figure out where that was, and Chris and I have been talking about this back and forth, testing everything. Where is this current coming from? And then I thought about the fact that this boat has a lot of carbon. Every single line is supported by reinforcement of carbon in the hull, in the deck, cross beams, and carbon it's a metal basically. It's conducive like a metal. So I thought that maybe the stainless steel touching the carbon is making current. And I ran this by Seawind, and they agreed that that's a possibility. Their recommendation would be to remove this pulpit, lift it up, rebed it, reseal all the holes. Yeah, normally each hole is bedded, re-drilled with epoxy. First they put epoxy, then re-drill it, and then put the steel. But maybe at some point it touches the carbon. And of course, as you've seen, we have taken this light out. We have disconnected completely any electricity to this pulpit, and there still has some voltage. So we don't have the time now to do it because we have to leave. The season is at the end. We have checked everything else, and after I separated the stanchions from the cap shroud with some tape, there is no more current going anywhere in the boat. So it's limited to this part, and I feel pretty comfortable that it should stay that way until we can then take this out and rebed it.
Hey guys, today is a very exciting day. We are supposed to be getting our new rigging installed today, and then after that we will be free to get out of the marina and move on. Been waiting for this for a while, and so we couldn't be happier. The first step was to remove the head sails, then release the tension from the cables and support the mast using the spinnaker halyard and jib halyard. Next, the crossbeam cable was loosened and removed and the new cable installed. The tension of the cable is decided by looking at the crossbeam to make sure it's straight and not bent at all. The halyards were loosened, tension released from the inner and cap shroud, and the halyards repositioned midship to support the mast. Then the cap shroud cables were exchanged. process was then repeated for the opposite side.
Ah bah oui. Ah d'accord, oui. Je vais faire pareil dire. Bon.
Once both cables were in place, each side was tensioned a little bit at a time until the riggers were satisfied. All right, the guys finished replacing the rigging and looks like they did a great job. They were very efficient. And they do have to come back on Monday with the tensioner to measure the tension of the capshrouds and the crossbeams just to make sure everything is good to go. But major step forward, feels so good. Monday morning, the riggers used a tension gauge to make the final adjustments. Okay. The moral of this story is that our decisions, even those that seem straightforward, like adding a new sail to our inventory, can lead us to uncover and resolve issues that might have otherwise remained hidden, with potentially serious consequences. In this case, discovering the broken rigging strands prevented a potential dismasting. It's a vivid reminder of the interconnected nature of our choices and actions, especially in an environment as dynamic and unpredictable as the sea.